Dr. Cax stared at the screen, his four eyes blinking in confusion. The human in front of him was crying, but according to his sensors, she was experiencing joy. This made no sense at all. Dr. Do-Jin, he called to his human partner. I believe your assistant is malfunctioning. Her face is leaking, but she claims to be happy about her mate's proposal of lifetime bonding. Dr. Do-Jin tried not to smile as he looked up from his desk at the Seoul Institute of Extraterrestrial Studies. His alien colleague had been making similar observations for the past 3 months, and each one was more entertaining than the last. Those are tears of joy, Dr. Cax. Humans can cry when they're very happy, he explained for what felt like the 100th time. Illogical. The release of excess eye fluid should indicate distress or injury, Cax muttered, making notes on his tablet. Adding to file. Humans leak from eyes for multiple, contradicting emotional states. Highly inefficient. The young assistant, Kim Na, wiped her eyes and bowed politely before leaving the lab. As soon as she was gone, Dr. Cax pulled up his daily report to the Galactic Research Council. Day 92 of human observation. Their emotional responses continued to defy basic logic. Subject displayed clear signs of distress while claiming positive emotional status. Previous observations of humans consuming spicy food that causes pain for pleasure may indicate a species-wide malfunction in their pleasure-pain responses. Do-Jin walked over to his alien colleague's desk and placed a cup of coffee next to him. Cax immediately backed away from the steaming liquid. You continue to consume this bitter stimulant despite its obvious defensive chemical properties, Cax noted with concern. I must include this in today's report as well. It's just coffee, my friend, Do-Jin said, taking a sip. Sometimes things that seem unpleasant can bring comfort or help us work better. Cax's antenna twitched in distress. Your species deliberately consumes defensive compounds for increased productivity. This requires immediate study. The council must be informed of these risk-taking behaviors. Before Do-Jin could explain further, the lab door opened, and Captain Han-Soo walked in, carrying a box of donuts. Morning, doctors. Thought you might need some sugar with your coffee. Cax's sensors went into overdrive as he analyzed the situation. Dr. Do-Jin, please explain. Why does this military officer bring circular sugar-fat compounds to a research facility? Is this some form of bribe? Should I report this to facility security? Han-Soo and Do-Jin exchanged amused glances. The captain set down the donuts and pulled up a chair. Dr. Cax, sometimes people just do nice things for each other. No reason needed. No reason. Cax's voice sounded almost pained. Actions without logical motivation. Impossible. There must be a survival benefit. Perhaps social alliance building. Resource sharing to ensure future reciprocation. Sometimes a donut is just a donut, Han-Soo said, offering the box to the alien. Cax backed away further, his antenna now fully erect in alarm. I must compile an emergency report to the council. Humans take actions without clear survival benefit. This could indicate serious cognitive issues across the entire species. As Cax frantically typed his report, Do-Jin and Han-Soo shared a knowing look. Explaining humanity to the galaxy was going to be a very long process. The morning meeting at the Seoul Institute was not going well. Dr. Cax sat at the head of the table, his antenna drooping in confusion as he looked at his newly assembled research team. I do not understand, he said, staring at his tablet. Lima's credentials show excellence in cultural studies, yet she keeps making sounds of excitement that disrupt logical discussion. Park Jun's data analysis skills are impressive, but he questions every statement I make. This team dynamic is inefficient. Do-Jin watched as Lima bounced in her seat, barely containing her enthusiasm about their latest findings. Next to her, Park Jun frowned at his screens, double-checking every piece of data. That's exactly why they're perfect for this project, Do-Jin explained. Different perspectives help us see the whole picture. The picture is already whole, Cax replied. Our scanning devices provide complete visual data. Captain Han Su, who was leaning against the wall, let out a small laugh. It's a figure of speech, Dr. Cax. Another one. Cax's antenna twitched. Your species uses too many indirect communication methods. Why not state facts clearly? Li Mai raised her hand, practically jumping out of her chair. Oh, can I explain this one? It's fascinating how humans developed metaphorical language too. The cultural specialist appears to be malfunctioning again, Cax interrupted, concerned. Her energy levels are unusually high. I'm just excited, Li Mai said, beaming. This is the first ever joint human-alien research project. How can you not be thrilled? Park Jun looked up from his screens. Actually, we should question whether her excitement is statistically normal for humans in scientific settings. I've analyzed the behavior patterns of researchers across 50 institutions, and... See, Cax pointed at Park Jun. He questions everything. Even his colleague's emotional state requires data analysis. Han Su stepped forward, his military training evident in his straight posture. That's humanity for you, Dr. Cax. We're not simple creatures you can fit into neat categories. Cax began typing rapidly, adding to observation log. Humans take pride in their inefficiency and resistance to categorization. Most troubling. We're not inefficient, Park Jun argued, pulling up a chart. If you look at the data on human innovation rates compared to other known species, the numbers person is doing it again. Li Mei clapped with delight. Isn't it wonderful how we all approach problems differently? Do Jin watched as Cax's antenna began spinning in circles, a sign of extreme confusion in his species. The alien researcher looked at his team, the overenthusiastic Li Mei, the skeptical Park Jun, the practical Han Su, and his steady partner Do Jin. I must inform the council, Cax said finally. Your species somehow functions despite having no standardization of personality or behavior. It defies all known social development models. Maybe that's our strength, Han Su suggested. Cax paused his typing. Strength through chaos. Impossible. Yet, he looked around the room again, noting how each team member's different approach had already added something unique to their research. Perhaps, he added to his report, further study is required to understand this puzzling advantage of human unpredictability. Li Mai clapped again. Park Jun started calculating the probability of Cax understanding humans, and Han Su just smiled. It was going to be an interesting project indeed. Kim Yun was having a normal morning until she walked into the lab carrying the team's coffee order. Dr. Cax immediately set off the biohazard alarm. Alert. Alert. Human Kim Yun has brought toxic substances into a secure facility. Cax's voice boomed over the speakers. The sprinklers started, soaking everyone except Cax, who had activated his personal shield. Kim Yun stood there, dripping wet, still holding the coffee carrier. It's just coffee, she shouted over the alarm. Just coffee? Cax's 4 eyes widened. You say just before naming a drink containing multiple toxic compounds. This requires immediate study. Dr. Do Jin, water dripping from his lab coat, finally managed to override the alarm system. Dr. Cax, we've discussed coffee before. It's safe for humans. Safe? Safe. Cax pulled up his analysis screen. This beverage contains caffeine, a known insecticide. The liquid is heated to temperatures that can cause tissue damage. And you added, he scanned the cups, flavor modifications containing high levels of sugar and fat. Li Mai, trying to save her now wet notes, raised her hand. Oh, can I explain why we like coffee? It's a fascinating cultural. No time for cultural analysis. Cax interrupted. Must document this systematic self-poisoning behavior immediately. Park Jun, wiping his glasses, looked at his datapad. Actually, if you analyze coffee consumption statistics, you drink this day. Cax's antenna stood straight up in shock as he read Park Jun's data. multiple times per day. And you pay for this poison. Captain Han Su walked in, saw everyone soaking wet, and sighed. Coffee incident. Affirmative, Do Jin said, attempting to dry his papers. Dr. Cax is writing his report now. They all watched as Cax frantically typed. Day 147 of human observation. Discovered organized system of voluntary toxic substance consumption. Humans have created an entire economic structure around the regular intake of insecticides and thermal damage agents. They gather in specialized buildings called cafes to engage in this behavior socially. Most disturbing development yet. Kim Yun, still holding the wet coffee carrier, tried to explain. But it helps us wake up and focus. They use it to alter consciousness. Cax added to his report. Subjects admit to chemical dependency for basic cognitive function. Maybe we should show him the break room's energy drink collection, Han Su joked. There are more such substances. Cax's typing speed doubled. Must inform council immediately. Possible civilization-wide addiction to toxic stimulants requires urgent study. As Cax composed his now 47-page report on human beverage consumption, the team began cleaning up the wet lab. Li Mi couldn't stop giggling. Park Jun was already calculating the statistical probability of future coffee-related incidents, and Kim Yun just stared sadly at the ruined coffee order. I'll get us new coffees, Han Su offered. No, Cax shouted. No more poisoning today. As senior researcher, I must protect the team from their own destructive habits. Do Jin patted his alien colleague's shoulder. How about we compromise? We'll drink our coffee in the other room. Humans willingly segregate themselves to consume toxins. Cax muttered as he added another page to his report. Fascinating and terrifying. Li Mi's grandmother had turned 90, and she invited the research team to the celebration. Dr. Cax agreed to attend, seeing it as a chance to study human social gatherings. He didn't expect it to break his understanding of emotions. Impossible, he said, watching Li Mi cry while hugging her grandmother. My sensors detect both happiness and sadness. This cannot be correct. Do Jin stood next to his confused colleague. Both readings are accurate. She's happy to celebrate with her grandmother, but sad because she misses her grandfather, who passed away last year. Two opposing emotions at once. Humans can do this. Cax's antenna twisted in confusion. Around them, the party was in full swing. Old photos played on a screen, showing Li Mi's grandparents when they were young. People laughed at funny memories, then wiped tears when they saw pictures of those who were gone. Their emotional state changes every 6.2 seconds, Cax noted, scanning the room. How do they function with such chaos in their minds? Park Jun approached with his datapad. Actually, studies show that emotional complexity contributes to better mental health. Better. Cax interrupted. You mean this instability is good for humans? They watched as Li Mi's grandmother looked at an old photo of her late husband and smiled through her tears. She hugged Li Mi tighter. Look at their faces, Han Su said quietly. They're sad about loss but happy about their memories. Both feelings are real. Both matter. Cax's sensors were working overtime. But emotions should be binary. Happy or sad. Angry or calm. This mixing of feelings defies basic neural processing. Just then, Li Mi's young nephew ran up and showed his great-grandmother a drawing. The old woman laughed with pure joy, her earlier tears forgotten. But then she looked at the child's face and cried again, saying he had his grandfather's eyes. Emergency report required. Cax declared. Human elder displaying rapid emotional switching. Possible neural degradation. No, Do Jin stopped him. This is normal for us. We can feel love and loss at the same time. Miss someone but be happy we knew them. It's not a malfunction. It's what makes us human. Cax stared at his readings. Your species can process multiple emotional streams simultaneously. Store them. Mix them. Create new emotional compounds. His voice trailed off as he watched the family share both laughter and tears. Adding to report, he said finally, human emotional capacity exceeds known psychological limits. They do not simply feel emotions, they blend them into complex experiences that defy standard classification. Most troubling discovery, this apparent chaos seems to make them stronger. As the party continued, Cax watched in fascination as humans moved smoothly between joy and sadness, pride and humility, love and loss. Each person was like an emotional orchestra, playing multiple feelings at once in a harmony his species had never imagined possible. Captain Han Su had invited the research team to observe a military exercise. Dr. Cax was excited. Finally, a chance to see humans behaving logically in a combat situation. He was wrong. Sergeant Bai One, explain your actions immediately, Cax demanded, watching the burly soldier cradle a tiny kitten in his massive hands. Found it under the tank, sir, Bai One said, gently wiping mud from the kitten's fur with his combat handkerchief. Couldn't just leave the little guy there. But you are in the middle of a warfare exercise. Cax's antenna spun in circles. Your unit is practicing tactical maneuvers with a 70-ton combat vehicle. Yes, sir. But look at his tiny face. Bai One held up the kitten, which mewed softly. Cax turned to Do Jin in distress. This soldier has 13 confirmed kills in past combat missions. He is qualified on 17 weapon systems. Yet he stops a military exercise for an infant feline. The entire tank crew had now gathered around, taking turns petting the kitten. These were hardened soldiers who, according to their files, had fought in multiple conflicts. Now they were making baby noises at a small ball of fur. Impossible reading, Cax muttered, checking his sensors. These humans show both peak aggression capacity and maximum nurturing instincts, simultaneously. Park Jun looked up from his datapad. Actually, studies show that soldiers often display heightened empathy. No, Cax interrupted. A species cannot be both apex predator and protective caregiver. Cannot be warrior and nurturer. Cannot be. He stopped as he watched Sergeant Bai One carefully place the kitten in his helmet for safety. The same hands that could field strip a weapon in seconds were now carefully arranging a makeshift blanket. Adding to report, Cax said weakly, humans demonstrate impossible behavioral duality. Subject can switch from lethal combat efficiency to maximum gentleness without pause. No psychological transition period required. Han Su smiled. You should see what happens when we find puppies. There are more examples of this. Cax's voice rose in panic. Just then, the base alert sounded. A brush fire had broken out nearby. Without hesitation, the soldiers jumped into action, but Ba One first made sure the kitten was safely handed to a medic. Battle-hardened warriors now functioning as rescue workers, Cax noted, watching the tank crew organize firefighting efforts. Tactical combat unit transforming into emergency response team. How do you not suffer mental whiplash from these constant role changes? We contain multitudes, Do Jin said simply. Multitudes, Cax repeated, adding to his report. Humans possess layered, seemingly contradictory nature, can destroy and protect, can fight and nurture. Most concerning discovery, they see no conflict in this duality. To them, it is perfectly natural to be both warrior and guardian, fighter and protector. As the soldiers worked to control the fire, the tiny kitten watched from the safety of the medical tent, unaware it had just helped reveal one of humanity's most puzzling traits to the galaxy. This area's efficiency rating is 0, Dr. Cax declared, watching children in the playground near the research facility. These small humans engage in activities with no productive output. Li Mai sat on a bench beside him, smiling as kids ran past playing tag. They're having fun, Dr. Cax. They're playing. Playing. Cax checked his database. Purposeless activity for entertainment. Why is this permitted? It's not purposeless, Park Jun said, looking up from his tablet. Studies show play develops cognitive abilities, social skills, and A child's laugh interrupted him as a little girl jumped into a puddle, splashing water everywhere. Deliberate contact with groundwater. Cax's antenna shot up in alarm. Where are the safety protocols? Why do the adult humans allow this chaos? Do-jin watched as the girl's friends joined her, all jumping and giggling. They're imagining the puddle is an ocean. See how they're pretending to be sea creatures. Imagining. Pretending. Cax's confusion deepened. They know it is not an ocean. Why engage in voluntary delusion? Just then, a group of boys ran past, wielding stick swords and calling themselves knights. They were defending their cardboard castle from an imaginary dragon. Emergency report, Cax declared. Young humans suffering mass hallucination. They mistake simple objects for weapons and fortifications. They see non-existent creatures. They're using their imagination, Han Su explained. It's how we learn to think creatively. You teach your young to reject reality. Cax's voice was faint. On purpose. A small boy approached them, holding out an empty hand. Would you like some ice cream? He asked politely. Before Cax could respond, Li smiled and pretended to take the invisible treat. Thank you. Mom, chocolate's my favorite. This is a shared delusion. Cax typed frantically. Adults are participating. The falsehood is spreading. The boy giggled and ran off to share more imaginary ice cream. Around them, the playground buzzed with activity. Children building sandcastles, having tea parties with stuffed animals, and creating entire worlds in their minds. Adding to report, Cax said, his antenna drooping in defeat. Humans deliberately train their offspring to see alternative realities. They encourage rejection of observable fact in favor of imagination. Most disturbing finding. This practice appears vital to their cognitive development. Want to try some invisible ice cream? Han Su offered, holding out an empty hand. Cax backed away. Negative. I must maintain grip on reality. Must not be contaminated by human imagination protocols. As they watched, a new game started. Children from different groups joined together, making up rules as they went along, changing them when they got bored. Final note, Cax added to his report. Human young possess ability to create, modify, and destroy entire worlds using only their minds. Galaxy must be warned. Every human child is a reality-bending entity in training. The tsunami warning came at 3 a.m. Dr. Cax watched in fascination as his prediction models for human behavior completely fell apart. Evacuate immediately. The warning system blared through the coastal city. According to Cax's calculations, humans should now be fighting each other for escape routes and supplies. Instead, he saw something very different. Captain Han Su, explain, Cax demanded, watching the soldier organize rescue teams. Why are humans returning to danger zones they just evacuated? Because there are still people who need help, Han Su replied, checking his radio. Sergeant Bad 1, take your team to the hospital. Help with patient evacuation. Cax's sensors were overwhelmed. All across the city, humans were ignoring basic survival logic. Neighbors helped elderly residents pack essential items. Strangers offered rides to those without cars. Store owners gave away water and food instead of selling them at crisis prices. This defies all emergency response models. Cax's antenna spun frantically. Humans are decreasing their own survival chances to assist others, even non-family members. Li Nai and Park Jun worked together, translating evacuation instructions into multiple languages. Some foreign tourists might not understand Korean, Li Mai explained. You waste time on language translation during a crisis. Cax couldn't believe it. Survival instinct should override social considerations. Just then, they heard barking. A group of teenagers had broken evacuation protocols to rescue dogs from the local shelter. Dr. Do-jin immediately sent a team to help them. Now you risk humans to save non-human animals. Cax's voice rose in panic. Have you all lost survival programming? The water was rising. Han Su's teams worked tirelessly, helping people reach higher ground. Rich and poor, young and old, locals and tourists. Everyone was treated equally. Adding to crisis report, Cax typed quickly. Humans abandon logical self-preservation in favor of group survival. Most concerning observation. They appear stronger when acting against individual interest. A massive wave approached the coast. The evacuation was nearly complete, thanks to the community's unified effort. Cax watched in amazement as humans formed long chains, passing supplies and helping others climb to safety. Final emergency note, he added. Human response to crisis reveals disturbing truth. They function as single organism when threatened. Individual survival algorithms are instantly overridden by group preservation directives. Galaxy must be warned. Humans become more efficient when they ignore efficiency. As the wave hit, Cax realized something even more shocking. Not a single human had tried to save themselves at the expense of others. In their moment of greatest danger, they had become their best selves. Dr. Cax stood before the Galactic Research Council, his final report displayed on the giant screen behind him. The council members looked troubled by his conclusions. You suggest we classify humans as beautifully incomprehensible. The head counselor's antenna twitched. That is not a scientific category. Neither are humans, by our standards, Cax replied. He looked at Dr. Do-Jin, who stood beside him. My research partner helped me understand something important. Not everything needs to be understood to be valued. The council chamber buzzed with concerned whispers. Cax displayed his evidence. Humans crying from happiness, soldiers saving kittens, children imagining dragons, and entire communities ignoring self-interest during crisis. Look at their contradictions, Cax continued. They build weapons that could destroy their world, then risk their lives to save a single tree. They argue constantly about tiny differences, then unite instantly when threatened. They know they are mortal, yet they laugh and dance and fall in love anyway. This is most irregular, another council member said. How can we interact with a species we cannot predict? Li Mai stepped forward. That's exactly why you should interact with us. We'll surprise you, challenge you, maybe even help you see the universe differently. Park Jun added, our data shows that unpredictability leads to innovation. In fact, the numbers person is doing it again, Cax said fondly. You see, even their scientists combine hard data with emotional investment. Han Su stood at attention in his formal uniform. We're not asking you to understand us completely. We're asking you to accept that some things are worth knowing even if you can't fully explain them. The council members looked at each other in confusion. This went against all their protocols. Final recommendation, Cax said firmly. Classify humans not as a problem to be solved, but as a wonder to be witnessed. Their chaos contains a pattern we cannot see. Their weakness is their strength. Their illogic has its own logic. Do-Jin smiled as Cax concluded. Let the record show that after 1 year studying humans, I, Dr. Cax, have learned that some questions are more valuable than their answers. And that is the most human thought I have ever had. The council chamber fell silent. Then, slowly, one member raised their hand. Perhaps we could learn from not understanding. As the council began their discussions, Cax turned to his human friends. I still don't understand you completely. Good, Li Mai said cheerfully. That's the point, Park Jun added, checking his data one last time. Exactly right, Han Su agreed. Do-Jin patted his alien colleague's shoulder. Welcome to being a little more human, Dr. Cax. And for the first time, Cax didn't add this interaction to his report. Some things, he had learned, were better left as mysteries.